going on, guys? Welcome to another episode of Bro History. It's Henry Zamota, Danny Abdel-Jabbar. The full team is here. How's it going, my good sir?
Chilling as per usual. How about yourself?
I'm doing pretty well. Happy belated Father's Day to all the fathers who are listening or watching right now. I do have a funny story because regards to fathers. So somebody I know who listens to the show, I saw him. This was a couple of weeks ago, and he was like, "What?" He was like, "What the hell?" I was like, "What's wrong?" He's like, "I listened to your show," and I'm like, "Like, did I say like?" I'm like, "Okay, what did I say? What did I do? I must have said something that offended him." And he's like, "I was doing errands around my house, and I left the show on the speakers, and my kid was listening to it, and then it got into some really raunchy stuff, and then my wife walked in, and she heard it and saw my kid, and then I got in trouble with my wife
for listening to Bro History
because I guess we got into some some of the lighter topics, or we just started making jokes that, and I'll just give you fair warning, don't listen to this in front of your kids, or if your kids are younger than, I don't know, 15 years old. I don't know what the appropriate age is, whatever guidelines that you set for them to listen to things with profanity, but yeah, be careful. It's not a child's show. But it was very funny because I thought he was going to get mad at something that we said regarding politics, like out of the many things that we could, that people would get offended by or upset by. He got upset because he got in trouble with his wife. So I found that really funny. But happy belated Father's Day. We are going to continue the conversation that we were having last week, because that is obviously the most high profile thing that's going on in the world right now. And we got to start off by talking about, I guess, some of the conclusions that we came to in the last episode that we were talking about. Iran's a topic. I don't know what the title of this podcast is going to be yet, but we're talking about Iran and the whole shit fest. That's the only word I can really use to describe it. That's going on in the Gulf of Oman, or what happened in the Gulf of Oman, in the Strait of Hormuz, with these Japanese tankers being suspiciously attacked while the Japanese prime minister was on a diplomatic mission there to ease tensions in the region. But we got to first start off by, I guess, issuing a correction, right, Danny?
Yeah. Made a pretty big mistake when talking about the alleged limpet mines that were used to, attack these vessels. And I guess that's just kind of like an issue with,
let's give a little bit of backstory, just so people who didn't listen to the last episode just know what we're talking about.
Absolutely. So in the last episode, we talked about the incident last week where the two tankers were in the Gulf of Oman and they were attacked by something. And the United States had claimed that they had evidence that limpet mines were used. And in the show, I made the comparison of limpet mines, and unfortunately, I was mistaken about what limpet mines were. I mistook it for what are actually called moored mines. So to give you a quick TLDR on what each of those mines are and what they do, a limpet mine is a small mine that is manually attached to the hull of a ship or a vessel using magnets, right? And it could explode using, timers or remotely, or, by using a turbine to monitor the water to see how far away they got. And I mistook a limpet mine for what are called moored mines. Now, moored mines are the ones that you might see in the movies and stuff like that. They're like the big bulbous floating mines that are attached by like a tether or a rope or something like that to the sea floor, and they just kind of float around there, and they can explode either, because they're magnetically attracted to something, electromagnetically attracted to like a ship. They could be acoustically exploded, meaning, the sound of the ship passing by causes it to explode. Or it could explode because of like changing water pressure because a ship is going by. And the assertion that I made on the last show was that, it's possible that Iran could have laid a bunch of moored mines, even though I called them limpet mines, across the Strait of Hormuz. And this was just like a coincidence that they hit a Japanese ship on the same day that Shinzo Abe, the prime minister of Japan, was treating with, the Ayatollah to smooth things out with the with Iran and the U.S. Now that's completely off the books. So I want to make that correction. I was wrong. And what I learned just by doing more research into it is that it's really, really interesting stuff comes out of it. So that's the correction that I wanted to make. Definitely not moored mines. It was the U.S. is saying that they were limpet mines. And spoiler alert, I don't buy it. But we can get into that.
Yes, and the infamous event that we're talking about right now is one that will probably go down in the history books.
Yeah, I think so.
These two tankers that were attacked allegedly by Iran, and I mean it's easy to get this confused, is because like when you say the word mine, the first thing that you think of is like a mine that you would step on,
right? Like a landmine,
like a landmine or anything. And when you say a mine in a strait or something like that, it's easy to confuse as something that you just accidentally sink into. But to be clear, so these mines, these limpet mines that
that the U.S. is alleging, right?
That the U.S. and
a lot of other places,
pretty much every single mainstream media outlet is reporting exploded these Japanese tankers. And if you guys are tuning in for the first time, 2 Japanese tankers were exploded. The U.S. is blaming Iran. The U.S. is saying, John Bolton and Mike Pompeo are getting hard-ons for war. At least that's how they sound. And they're like, we gotta leave all options on the table. They can't attack our allies, the Japanese. Oh, hey. So these limpet mines means that somebody had to go on the accusation of using limpet mines means that somebody had to go swim onto the ship without it being noticed at all. So they had
in the middle of the straits, by the way.
In the middle of the straits, they had to go swim unnoticed and attach these mines manually. I don't know if there's any other way to attach them.
Throw them, but I mean,
you can throw them, but someone had to do it.
Right.
Someone had to do it.
Somebody had to do it at some point.
And it just seems really, really odd. How would somebody do that? And how would somebody get that close to the boat without being noticed
in the middle of the day?
In the middle of the day.
In the middle of the water.
Being noticed. And then the only option would be if the mine was actually attached prior to the ship leaving port, right? Is that
right? And I did some research on that, and I was all over the internet trying to find out like where were these ships before they got exploded. And so the one that everyone's talking about is the Kokuka Courageous. That's the Japanese-owned vessel. It actually flies a Panama flag, and it previously was last seen at port, and I went on this website. It's called myshiptracking.com. I don't know what the point of this is, but you can track all the different ships all over the world.
And for a podcast like this, that's the point.
Exactly for this, yeah. It was traveling at 0.1 knots, so that means it was going like 11 miles an hour, which isn't super fast, but when you think about it, like Michael Phelps can't swim that fast. Like I can't imagine that somebody would be able to catch up without like a boat. And if they're on a boat, they'd see you. So I'm ruling out that they just randomly attached it in the middle of the ocean. But the last port that they were at, the Kokuka Courageous, I'm just going to call it Courageous for now, was in China, in Shiyu, China. All the way on the other side of fucking world, right? So limpet mines can be activated like with a timer or like, remotely, things like that. But like, in order for this to have worked, they would have had to attach it in China, because I'm ruling out the ability for them to sneak up on a ship and attach it there. So they were in China. They were going to Khor which is in the United Arab Emirates. That's in the Gulf of Oman. That's where they were headed. Yeah, I don't buy it. I don't like they weren't even in the right region for like Iran to do anything about it, or any Middle East proxy.
Let me take this on. Yes. So It seems highly unlikely that this is a mine. It seems a lot more likely that it was probably, it wasn't even a torpedo, right? Like it had to be either,
It could have been a torpedo.
it could have been a
It could have been a
torpedo.
torpedo.
It could have been like
But
a rocket. Could it have
we'll,
been?
yeah, we'll get there. We'll get there. So I want to stick on this mine thing to use
Okay.
a pun here. Looking at these pictures that the United States, put out, there's this one picture, and I emailed it to you, but you can take a look at it with me here. There is a on the left-hand side. This is on the starboard side. That's the right-hand side, by the way, for non-naval folks. There is a big hole, right, and it's a damage after the explosion. And then to the right of it, looks like a little like knot on the side of it. That's the alleged unexploded mine that was allegedly removed by the Iranian patrol boat, which is pretty fishy. That's the weirdest part in this whole thing, that they did go up to that side of the boat and it looked like they were doing something on the side of the boat. So I'm not really sure what's going on with that. But if you just look at where they're placed, like they're pretty far above the waterline. Again, I'm going to preclude that anyone swimming up to the ship could have done it. They would have had to have been on a boat to do this, and like unlikely, very, very unlikely that they would have done it while they were en route to the UAE. And also, I don't know very much about like shipping, but I would assume that a ship of this size carrying tons of materials and lots of money, that they inspect the ship before they leave, right? And if I could see what looks like an alleged unexploded mine on the side of that boat, so can anyone else on that boat. You don't think that they would have noticed that there was a mine on the side of the boat? I don't know. I don't buy it. And then what kind of drives a wedge into this issue is that the other ship that no one's talking about right now, but I think it's the Norwegian ship, that's called the Frontline Altair. Same day, they also got hit. Some World Maritime News reported that they were allegedly hit by torpedoes, right? And that's pretty interesting because they were the only place that I saw that was really talking about torpedoes at all. But they were hauling 75 tons of naphtha. I have no idea what the hell that is. And they were loaded in Abu Dhabi and were on its way to the same place in the UAE. So, could there have been proxies from Iran or other people that could have done it in that port? Like maybe. But this reporting is saying that they were hit by torpedoes, not by mines, right? And there's no, U.S. evidence of a, Iranian patrol boat removing unexploded mines from that ship. And there's actually not a whole lot of pictures about that ship in general on the internet. Like everyone's focused on this Japanese ship, the Courageous. So that's super weird. But again, I'm still ruling out like this, that the Courageous, somebody stuck something on the side of it at any point, either in China or all the way over here. Like I'd give super props to Iran if they have proxies in China that would be doing this. Like that's crazy.
No, I highly doubt it. So looking at that photo, what it reminds me of, that grainy, all the evidence that John Bolton and Fat Boy, let's just call him Mike Pompeo, Fat Boy for now on.
Boy.
Mustachio and Fat Boy. It sounds like two nuclear bombs that we would drop on somebody, and that's basically what they kind of are.
Yeah.
They're two
nuclear bombs waiting to go off. Yeah.
Yeah, they're two people who are, I don't know, I think they were probably picked on in high school too much and they want to take it out on the world, or some guys who were dorks and they got these positions of power and they lost their empathy in the process of getting these positions of power, which I think a lot of neocons are. We're just dorks who got these high positions of power and they're just like, I'm going to take revenge out in the world, on the world right now. But these really inconclusive photos that CNN and BBC and pretty much every mainstream media outlet is just like posting as their headline, Iran backed, conclusive. Like they're all really, really just short-sighted and they lead the average consumer of news that, okay, Iran attacked us in the Strait of Hormuz. But then when you actually read the articles, they're very inconclusive and they don't actually prove a damn thing. And what these photos are kind of remind me of is the show Arrested Development. Have you ever watched Arrested Development?
I've seen many episodes.
There's an episode where everyone bear with me who hasn't seen the show, but it's a great scene. So the Fonz, Henry Winkler plays the family lawyer, and George Sr., the father, he's being investigated for possible treason. This takes place in 2003. So he's being investigated for working with Saddam Hussein and building model houses there. And they find this map that's just like, it looks like terrain. It looks like just like a desert terrain, and they're using it as evidence to prosecute George Sr. Bluth for working with Saddam Hussein. But then when they investigate the picture further, it just ends up being balls. Like it ends up being a close-up shot of testicles. And it just looks like a landscape of a desert. That's what this photo really reminds me of. It's just balls. It's just balls. It kind of looks like it kind of looks like a vagina. Like the hole on the ship, the pictures of it just kind of looks like a grainy picture of an old-fashioned vagina. Like it's just it's
complete with 70s bush and all.
Use that as such a pretext for the saber rattling is just, honestly, it's humorous at this point. Like, I'm not even mad. John Bolton, he was like, he was like, who do you think did do it? If Iran didn't do it, who do you think did do it? Panama? Would Panama do it? Look, that's like that. Iran. That's the only other option. If Panama,
it must have been the Vatican.
It must have been Martian. It's either Iran or Martians. Well, you don't think that Martians exist, do you?
Can I just point out, like, the quality of these images and videos? Like, all the money we spend on the military, and we can't get some high fucking quality pictures out of this shit. Like, I feel like I'm looking at like UFO sightings and shit. Like, some of these things are so damn grainy. It's like, dude, get a good camera. Like, I feel like my phone can take a better picture than that.
It looks like the Loch Ness Monster. Like the picture of the Loch, like
it's like they just spotted him.
Yeah, like
it's like Bigfoot. Evidence. Oh shit.
For now on, I want to make it a meme that we just like take really blurry pictures and just say evidence that Iran is laying mines in the Strait of Hormuz.
Make for some good tweets, like UFO sightings, Bigfoot, the Loch Ness Monster,
Iran, but Bigfoot. But I just, I'm glad that that you're, I don't want to say you're coming around with it because you're pretty objective.
Right.
I will say that Danny is incredibly objective when it comes to everything that we talk about. Whenever we talk about a topic, he doesn't bring any kind of like bias into it. And he always gives, I would say that you give the government the benefit of the doubt before making accusations of like false flags and stuff like that, which I think is really valuable because it adds credibility of us just not being Looney Tunes who are just, not Jonestown guys who are like, this intergalactic, so space-time continuum. They added with a bomb magnite, and it adds a little bit more credibility. And I'm happy that you're coming around, but like it just smelled like complete bullshit all along. And I guess technically it's not conclusive yet of what actually happened. And we'll never probably find out exactly what happened.
No, I don't think so. And there's still some stuff that, like, yeah, I agree, dude. I am coming around to this being bullshit just because, like, after finding out where the ships were, where they were going, how high up above the waterline. I mean, videos and, like, this evidence that they were talking about hadn't even been released when we were talking about it. So at that point, we were just postulating on what what it could have been. But after reviewing some of this evidence, like, I want to take as objective a stance on it. And, like, it doesn't seem realistic that limpet mines were used. But at the same time, like, I am curious about why the hell was that patrol boat right up on the side of the thing? What were they doing there? And I am curious about that little notch on that picture that could be the alleged limpet mine. Like, I don't know. Like, I do not know what those are. That's interesting. But even if they were limpet mines, that still isn't conclusive evidence that it was Iran that did it. As a matter of fact, the evidence that I've just put forth in the show today suggests that it would be incredibly difficult for Iran to have done something like that with limpet mines as they are. And that's kind of what Pompeo had said in a press conference on Thursday. And he said that, and I'll quote him on this. He said that their assessment was based on, quote, intelligence, the weapons used, the level of expertise needed to execute the operations, recent similar Iranian attacks on shipping, and the fact that no proxy group operating in the area has the resources and proficiency to act with such a high degree of sophistication. The statement in and of itself, dude, makes sense. However, when you put the whole picture together, like, yeah, maybe Iran is the only person in the area that has the level of sophistication and the access to those types of weapons. But the damn ship was in China before it got there. When did they attach it? Right? I think it's more likely, if it was Iran or any other actor, that this was an attack either using a cruise missile, a torpedo, a sub-launched cruise missile, or some other rocket, because the president of the Courageous had said that he's reporting that there was a flying object that caused the damage of the ship in that attack, and so does many of the crew members, right? So they're saying that something flew at it, right? And that's kind of with where the impact of that crater is on that ship, like that lines up pretty well. It's above the water line. It didn't get hit under the water line or at the water line. It's several feet above the water line. So I don't know. Jury's out on it, but like I'm starting to not necessarily disbelieve the United States assessment. I'm starting to believe that their assessment is very naive, or at least the assessment that they're putting out in press conferences is very short-sighted and very naive. And I think I'd argue perhaps even deceptive in many ways. Like they're trying to push an agenda. The agenda is that they don't like Iran, and so they'll give us just enough information to make it seem like that was the case.
Yeah, and I just want to kind of be clear. My opinions, we were talking about this before. My opinions still haven't changed about the possibility of going to war with Iran. I still don't think we'll ever go to war with Iran.
Yeah,
I think you don't. I think you agree with me.
Mm-hmm.
So you got to think. All right. So why are we doing all the saber rattling? If this is just like, whether you want to say it's a false flag, whether you want to say it is a accident that the U.S. is taking advantage of to push a political agenda, say either one of them. The question is why? Why is the rhetoric so tough from Pompeo? Why is there so much certainty from that side of Iran doing this? And I don't think that. Maybe Mike Pompeo. I don't think Mike Pompeo is crazy enough. Maybe John Bolton is crazy enough to want to go to war with Iran.
Maybe.
If anyone's crazy enough, I think it would be John Bolton. But like, no one from the Pentagon wants to go to war with Iran.
Yeah, no, they're not.
No one from the there's no. You'd be hard pressed to find someone in the military who would think that is a good idea, and everyone knows the consequences. Like everyone who understands how big of a country Iran is. There's 80 million people who live there. Everyone who understands the terrain of Iran, everyone who just has a mild understanding of that region knows that a war with Iran would be devastating. It would be terrible. It would be awful. It would be, there'd be so many casualties on the U.S. side. It would be a regional war
side for sure.
Mm-hmm. It'd be a regional war, not just in Iran. There's so many countries that have trade borders with Iran. They're very strategically located country. It does not make sense. And then, like, all right, if you're talking about all right, military action, like what does military action mean? Because the Strait of Hormuz, the whole conflict, the Persian Gulf, Strait of Hormuz, all these areas that we're talking about right now, which are basically the same area in the Persian Gulf, these shipping lanes, these very crowded shipping lanes where 20% of the world oil supply goes through, they're an incredibly strategic place. And if those straits were to shut down, it would be devastating for the world economy. It would be specifically devastating for a country like Japan, whose tankers were blown up. And that's why they went there in the first place, because they want to ease tensions in that region, because they understand the threat of that strait closing would be very, very bad for their economy. And
Right.
they know, and Japan is the perfect mediator in this type of instance when you think about it. All right,
Yeah.
so Japan, they're going there. Shinzo Abe, he even said, the reason why he went to Iran to negotiate is because he wanted to ease tensions in the region. And what better mediator would be when you're trying to ease tensions with a country that you're claiming, because this is the pretext of all these sanctions with Iran, is the fact that they have a nuclear weapons or not a nuclear weapons program, but they have a civilian nuclear program that could possibly turn into a nuclear weapons program in the future.
Right.
What better arbiter than to have Japan do it? The one country in the entire world, that's been bombed by not just one, but 2 nuclear bombs. What better country to serve as that mediator?
Right.
What better judge to do that? They don't
Right.
want regional instability in that area. That's why they
certainly
went.
don't want anyone to die from a nuclear strike either.
Yeah, I mean, on the moral issue, Japan's very, very, they're anti-nuclear
Proliferation.
proliferation. They don't want the spread of nuclear weapons, obviously because of their past. And it just seems so weird that while Shinzo Abe is in Iran and he's mediating, I don't even want to say mediating, because Iran no one looks at the U.S. as with any type of credibility when it comes to negotiating these deals, because you just need to look at Gaddafi. Like the U.S. doesn't have credibility. So they're trying to ease tensions and their tankers blow up. It's like in Scarface when Scarface comes back from Bolivia and he's talking to and Sosa kills his the guy he's with. He throws him out the helicopter and he's talking to Frank and he's like, "You want me to believe that he was an informant because Sosa said so?" Like, that's what it reminds me of.
Yeah, a little bit. So who's Scarface in this case? Is that Shinzo Abe?
No, Scarface is Shinzo Abe. Japan's being pretty practical and they're not jumping to any conclusions.
Right. They
Like
still have yet to release any statements about who they believe, was responsible, which I think is really responsible of them to just like not stay out of it, but like not jump to any conclusions either. They're taking a more pragmatic approach, I think.
It's smart. It's smart of them to be pragmatic about the situation. And like, I want to talk about this. I want to talk about like Japan, what led up to this event. I think it's important to go over this because we're talking about this. Like, why is Japan there in the first place? Yeah, we talked about mediating deals, but what actually led up to this?
Right.
And I'm tracing this back right now to the end of last year. So November of last year in 2018, the Trump administration, they reinstated all U.S. sanctions on Iran that were removed under the 2015 nuclear deal.
Right.
However, temporary waivers were granted to 8 countries to allow them to continue importing Iranian oil.
Right.
Among those countries that were allied with the U.S. were Italy, India, South Korea, and Japan. China's included as well, but those are the main countries, our allies. But Japan was issued waivers to continue buying oil from Iran because
for a limited period of time.
Because Japan doesn't import. They import all of their oil. They don't have natural resources in Japan.
Well, they do, just not oil.
They don't have oil. They don't have minerals. They don't have energy. They have to import all that information. That was one information. They have to import all those resources. That was one of the main reasons why they attacked the United States during World War II, is because the U.S. stopped selling them oil when they were in war with China.
Good point.
And what I found interesting in between this is that they started working out an F-35 deal. And this was like, they were talking about this for a while, but December, after Trump announced that they were going to reinstate all those U.S. sanctions, Japan said that they were going to increase the procurement of F-35 Joint Strike Fighters, which are it's a controversial plane. I know people have mixed opinions on it. Some people are like, "Oh, you shit on the F-35. You don't know what the hell you're talking about. You don't know about how advanced and how they fix all the issues of the stealth technology and how." And I understand the points that you're making about the F-35. Yes, there probably are advantages of fighting.
There are many. Objectively,
there are many. Yes, I'm sure. Yes, you're correct. But you can't omit the failures of the program so far and the cost of it and a lot of the negative things associated with it. You can't omit all of that and not.
Yeah, I mean, I've said this before. You know, the F-35 isn't the first jet to fall out of the sky when they were testing it. Right? Many, if not all, of the jets that they've tested, all the new planes, all the new things, have fucked up at some point. But the F-35 certainly is the most expensive one.
It's the most expensive plane.
Right. It's the most expensive plane to fall out of the sky. Right. So we have to be able to criticize it, right? On those grounds, right? If this is, they got to get it right if they're going to spend that much money.
And you have to be able to ask the question of, when you're investing so much money into a company like Lockheed Martin,
Mm-hmm.
who's the price of these planes are about what are they? They run at about $100 million a unit.
More than that, probably.
More than that. I think the lowest price I saw some different prices, but between 95 to 122 million is like the lowest cost that you can find. Japan's gonna be buying brand new ones.
Right.
So, and they confirmed that they confirmed there would be an increase. They were going to have a bunch of new F-35Bs, the ones that are on the Navy that attach to aircraft carriers. They confirmed that in December, and then a couple of months later in April, it was like a big story. There was an F-35 that disappeared out of the air.
Yep.
In Japan, remember that? It just disappeared.
Just went missing.
It just went missing. We don't know where it happened. We talked about it last episode, but it just vanished. We don't. There was like debris that they speculate where it went, but it's gone. The pilot died. So on the beginning of May, the deadline for the deadline for the Iranian oil waivers. So all of our allies, Italy, India, South Korea, Japan, they couldn't buy oil from Iran, or they would have the consequence of suffering economic penalties from the United States. Mm-hmm. Meaning, the economic penalties that the United States issues is that we don't give them access to the dollar.
Right. Among other things.
2 weeks later, after the deadline for Iranian oil waivers, Mohammad Javad Zarif, who is the Iran's foreign minister, he went to Tokyo and he met with Shinzo Abe, and they went to discuss countermeasures for pulling out of the Iran deal. Mm-hmm. So there was this line of communication. Like, this isn't like the start of the conversation.
Right. It didn't come out of nowhere.
Iran was there last month.
Mm-hmm.
So this was like follow-up meeting to discuss countermeasures for the Iran deal, for pulling out of the Iran deal. Trump follows up with the meeting 2 weeks later. He goes like on a 5-day trip to Japan. He concludes his meeting on May 28th. His goal when he went to Japan was to iron out U.S. trade deficits, because last year the U.S. had a $67.6 billion trade deficit with Japan.
Right.
And Trump, the goal was to, I guess, level that deficit out. During that trip, Japan agreed to buy 105 more new F-35s. And that purchase, that would give Japan the largest fleet of F-35s out of any U.S. ally in the world. Right. So bigger than Britain. Britain they were number 3 previously. They moved up to number 2 and they passed Britain after that. I'm correct on that, right? I don't want to.
I'm pretty sure. Yeah.
Yeah.
I know that this
that purchase, but they don't have that yet. Like they don't, you don't go there and like, oh, here are my F-35. They're in the trunk.
Right.
They're in the trunk. Just get some movers.
Some creepy guy in an alleyway opens up his trench coat and says, "You want to buy some jets?
You want to get some jets?" You purchase them. You purchase them in squadrons.
Yeah.
And I don't know how big a Japanese squadron is. Maybe it's 10 planes, maybe it's 20 planes, but you purchase them and you get paid when you receive them.
Right.
So if they can
COD, baby, cash on delivery.
Yeah, they can commit to 105 F-35s, but
doesn't mean they're actually going to buy them all.
Doesn't. Right. Yeah, like the same thing happened with Saudi Arabia last year. Right. Because remember when Trump was bragging about the $1 billion in arms sales to Saudi Arabia?
Right.
Those arms sales were like speculative. They were like, like they were based off.
It's booking a deal as opposed to actually like taking in the money.
Exactly. So the unit price of an F-35, let's say $250 million.
Right.
Is that a safe price for an F-35A? Mm-hmm. Something like that.
I'll look it up while you talk too.
So that would put Lockheed Martin in a position to earn billions in arms sales with Japan. So why would Japan invest so much money into a jet fighter that previously in April just disappeared out of the sky?
Mm-hmm.
Well, there's a couple of reasons that I can think off top end. Like, I don't necessarily think it's to counteract. I don't think it's to counter China. Like,
China.
That's on paper. Like, if you read the news, it'd be like, Japan is committing to counter Chinese expansion in the South China Sea by getting F-35s.
Right. That's not the plane to counter.
Yeah, that's not the plane to counter China with.
That's why they're working on their own 6th-gen stealth fighters.
Like that's not the plane to counter it. They did it. They bought those extra planes to balance out the trade deficit. One,
right. I think it's important to talk about what a trade deficit is because maybe not everyone doesn't know what it is. It's basically when let's say Henry and I are trading with each other, right? And I export fucking chalk dust to Henry, and that costs $100. And then he gives me in return exports of, I don't know, $200 worth of Adidas hats, right? Henry now has a trade deficit with me of $100. Does that make sense?
That makes sense. I think that's a good description for.
So when two countries trade with one another, the balance of the value of the things that they trade each other either results in a deficit, a surplus, or I don't even know what they would call like a break even. Well, let's just call it a break even. And right now, we buy more things from Japan than they buy from us. Hence the $6 billion. Cars and video game systems and shit like that.
Hence like everyone loves Toyotas. Even ISIS loves Toyotas. Even Chad and Libya love Toyotas. Everyone loves Toyota trucks in the Middle East. They're great. Look up Toyota Hiluxes. Type in ISIS Toyota, and you will see a brigade of Toyota trucks because they're so great that they can last in the sun.
Parts are easy to find and cheap to manufacture and easy to change.
They're great for desert warfare. They're great.
Yeah.
Look up the Toyota Wars. We've been planning to do a podcast on this forever, and we still haven't gotten to it yet. But the Toyota Wars between Chad and Libya is incredibly interesting. Chad used Toyotas. They basically just attached, high caliber guns in the back of the pickup truck, and they destroyed Libya. All right. I lost my train of thought. All right. So why would Japan invest so much money in a jet fighter that is notorious for falling out of the sky? They wanted to balance up the trade deficit. But another thing is that you could also say their affinity for kamikazes, right? They want to do F-35 kamikaze swarms.
No.
That's how they're going to counter China. They're going to do an F-35 kamikaze swarm.
I doubt it. I highly doubt it.
All right. So I think that this was actually a very brilliant plan by Japan in the long run. And the reason why is because if you order a large amount of The reason why is if you order a large amount of F-35, that would put them in favor with the very powerful arms lobby in the U.S., in addition to balancing their trade deficit.
Right.
So then when they actually negotiated with Iran because they want to get that oil, then they'd have more leeway to negotiate. They'd have more pull, and they'd have the side of a powerful American lobby behind on their back.
And I want to underscore again what you said before. When they say they're planning on buying 105 brand new F-35s, it doesn't mean that they bought it. It says that they're agreeing to buy it, right? So they can use that as leverage and say, like, hey, United States, like, we kind of need oil and we really want to buy it from Iran, but the timeline for us, the oil waivers has run out. So, like, maybe we could do a little deal, and, that's a nice 105 F-35 deal you got there. It'd be a shame if something happened to it, like
they can cancel the PO. Like, they just say, no, like, we're done with this.
Yeah, it's like we don't need this anymore. And there'd be no skin off their back either, because they haven't committed any money. And they didn't want it in the first place.
Or if they just get 20 or 40 more planes, and I mean, there's still billions of dollars being left on the table.
Right.
So when Shinzo Abe, before he left on the 12th, and I'll quote him, he said, amid heightened tensions between Iran and the U.S. must be avoided at all costs, when asked about an accidental conflict.
Mm-hmm.
A day later, 2 ships were attacked in the Strait of Hormuz.
Right.
It
actually happened an hour before they were set. Like, I saw the timeline. It happened an hour before they were set to talk. An hour.
So it's weird. And we've talked about this so much to the point where, like, I'm sure you guys are bored of this conversation, that, like, it's like inconceivable to think about a war with Iran just because of how costly it most likely would. Not only in let's just take away the invasion part over invading Iran through, like, Iraq over mountains and over to Tehran off the table, because it's just so perplexing. It would be like Hannibal crossing the Alps, but like it'd be terrible. Like, it would be terrible. Right. It would just be awful. Like, I would just be absolutely heartbroken if American servicemen had to do that. Like, if they were forced to go over mountains and fight in, like, it would be insane. Just in the Persian Gulf alone, we would lose a massive amount of ships. Like, Iran's been this isn't, ever since the tanker wars in the 80s, like, what they've been trying to do as far as getting them a strategic advantage has been trying to figure out a way that they can close those straits and take down as many U.S. ships and create a deterrent for the U.S. Navy operating in the area. And there's so many variables that can go on. We did an entire podcast on this, so I'll refer to the Millennium Challenge podcast that we did.
Right. Super interesting.
It's really interesting. It's about a war game that we did with 2002. 2002 with a fictional Iran. The U.S. they got a retired Marine general to play the role as Iran, and he sunk a bunch of U.S. ships, and he inflicted over 20,000 deaths. I mean, virtual deaths, but he did it nonetheless by just using tactics that he thinks that Iran would probably use, because he could think of it. Why can't they think of it? They had the resources. Like, it's a narrow and shallow sea. It's just crowded. It would be I cannot see a positive outcome for a full-out war, a full-out military conflict in that area. I think it would be terrible.
Mm-hmm.
Terrible.
Yeah.
And you can like back up. You're way better at this. You're way more knowledgeable about the military tech stuff. You can endorse a little bit of what I'm saying of how bad it would be.
I endorse it fully. It would be very, very, very dangerous and very expensive and very operationally difficult to do.
because it wouldn't just be like it wouldn't just be a war, like a World War II style war with tanks rolling in. Like
No,
it would be a combination of that, but with the
it would
addition
have to be
of
land, sea, and
fighting.
air unless our like objective wasn't to occupy it all. I mean, there's always the option that we just nuke them, right? But
That would be
like
the option. Just
there's
obliterate the
always
country.
that option, but it's like, well, Jesus Christ, like
You're gonna nuke that country. There's so many like, I mean, our own allies that we do that. I mean, run our foreign policy basically would be affected by nuclear holocaust there. Do you think Israel and Saudi Arabia want a nuke to go off in Iran? I mean, I
no.
think that would be ridiculous.
Yeah,
I
no,
think
they don't
that
want that.
I think that I just a war in Iran it would be really bad for our allies there. I was listening to the War Nerds, Radio War Nerd. They had a really good podcast, and I recommend it. They did one on the Millennium Challenge as well, and they also did like an in-depth dive into like what would a war with Iran and the U.S. look like. And they brought up a really interesting point. There's like a lot of um, the countries on the Trucial coast of the UAE and Oman and Saudi Arabia. A lot of people have money. They're wealthy. There's a lot of wealth in
That
those
oil
areas.
money, black
And
gold.
something I found really interesting is that there's a lot of people with private boats
Hmm.
who just sail. Like they obviously, if you have a
Right.
private boat, you're going to go sail. Well, like the cost of just like evacuating those people and making sure that they're safe, and then doing all the defense for Saudi Arabia if missiles start flying that way would just be like an incredible endeavor by itself.
Right.
So it'd just be absolutely terrible. And no one from the Pentagon, I don't really, the Pentagon is not for this. It's just the
Mhm.
crazies. It's the crazies like John Bolton.
Right.
I don't even think Mike Pompeo believes what he's saying. I think Mike Pompeo is just kind of a snake in the grass who's just like, all right, I'll do
Probably just
it.
taking orders and doesn't want to get fired and says like,
Yeah,
well, if I talk shit about Iran, um, Trump will be happy with me.
kind of like I don't think Trump even knows what's going on, to be
Of
completely
course,
honest.
come on, let's be real. He doesn't really know what's going on for
He
most
doesn't know
things.
what's going on. He gets informed by
If it's not on Fox News, he doesn't know what's going on.
his security briefings by John Bolton and then Fox News. Like that's his
And I heard those like briefings are like one page with like hella pictures. It's like, this is Iran.
Is
This
then
is
Iran did that?
people.
Well, okay. Hey, okay, we'll tell him that we don't want to go to war, but no, yeah.
Fire
Um,
Fury. Yeah.
yeah, okay. Um, yeah. So like, why would they have such hard rhetoric? I think it's because in July, the new NDAA is coming up. The new National Defense Authorization Act is coming
Right.
up,
Right.
and they
One
want to
excuse to spend more
justify
money. Yeah.
spending for like maritime for vessels to protect like maritime shipping from foreign countries.
Maritime.
Maritime,
Maritime.
maritime,
Maritime.
maritime,
Not maritime. It's maritime.
maritime,
Maritime.
maritime. All right, maritime shipping
There you go.
by foreign countries. I think that's ultimately what they're trying to justify, that extra spending in the budget.
And it's funny, same podcast that you sent me, from the War Nerds, like they're talking about like how obsolete they believe that, these large vessels are. And, with this asymmetrical warfare, which is, you know, it, it basically means like one side has more bigger guns. The way to take them down is to, just swarm them with rockets and a bunch of stuff. Like even these, the largest super carrier can only take but so many, direct open fire hits. So, we're spending more money on that. We need to come up with some new ideas. Like super carriers are great for, adversaries like Russia and China and stuff like that, but not necessarily for folks who have no hope of, going toe to toe with, a carrier strike group and living to tell the tale about it. Right. They're going to do the dirtiest possible things to get it done. And they don't care how it is that they get it done, but they'll get it done. It's something to say about that because, our adversaries that could probably go toe to toe with us, at least for a little while, might think of using the same asymmetrical warfare as well.
And it's like, it's not that Iran has a stronger military or anything like that. It's that they have enough military punch to inflict enough casualties to make it just really awful. Like,
right.
What
you're
if
going to go down kicking and screaming?
Like, if you go to war with Iran, like, you're talking about losing a lot of people. You're losing a lot of servicemen.
Right.
Like, if you don't give a shit about the people who die in the Middle East, because it would be a regional war affair of warfare. Like, it would be Iraq, Syria, Israel, Lebanon would all be involved in the war as well.
Honestly, I'd argue
Saudi
that
Arabia
powers would be in there too. Like, like you're saying, a lot of up and coming countries like China, and places in Southeast Asia that rely on the oil that's coming through that shipping lane. They're not going to sit around and be like, yeah, cool, you guys figure it out. Just let us know when we could get some oil. Like, they have a vested interest in being there too. So,
do you know who? And this brings me to like the final point I wanted to make. Like, do you know who would benefit the most of a U.S. war with Iran?
Who's that?
Russia.
Yeah,
they would be the ones who would benefit the most when you really think about it.
And why is that?
Because if the strait was closed, then who would be the next biggest oil supplier?
Mother Russia.
If you took out Iran and you took out Saudi Arabia and you took out all the countries in the Arabian Gulf and Iraq and all those Middle Eastern countries, if they had the inability to ship out of the Strait of Hormuz,
I suppose maybe like Venezuela could come up, but like they're having their
Venezuela would probably benefit as well. But I mean, they're having their own problems.
Right.
Russia is definitely not like a world power right now. They have a strong military and they have nukes, but like they're still kind of a third world country when you think about it. Like, the average income for someone in Russia is, I don't know the exact number, but it's the standard of living and is way lower than the U.S. or most Western countries. It's probably, I think it's somewhere around like $10,000 a year.
And also, most of their country is Siberia. So
a lot of their country is Siberia. Mother Russia. I'm watching Chernobyl, and
I finished it. It's
excellent,
awesome.
excellent film.
I heard that RT is making a Chernobyl of their own because they were mad that about the way that HBO portrays the Soviet Union during that. So they're making their own revised Chernobyl. I'd watch it.
HBO did a great job on that. They really followed up on their flop of Thrones season.
I mean, I'd watch the Russian one, even if it was totally propaganda. I think it might be kind of funny.
I listened.
Nothing happened. We were on top of it the entire time.
No, I think the rumor is that they're going to try to pin it on the CIA doing something nefarious. That's the rumor of what
CIA broke their button. AZ1.
Because like Sky News co-produced this, or Sky Network co-produced this HBO series, and I've had some very critical things to say about Sky News on this podcast, but like I thought the show I thought it did a great job at like portraying what like a hardcore communist like a statist country, or at least communist Russia in the 80s was like, and being fair about like just the whole process of how everything went wrong in the nuclear plant. I really, really enjoyed it. And I haven't finished it yet. I still have 2 episodes left.
I really liked how, and you'll get to this, especially in the last episode, I liked how they took great pains to explain how a nuclear reactor works and why it was such a problem as it was. And, I'm not a nuclear physicist or anything like that, but to my knowledge, it was very accurate. And there's a scene at the end that I won't spoil for you because I know that you haven't finished it, but main character really goes into depth on like why it was that this shit spun out of control as much as it did. It's super interesting, and he paints a picture for like layman's people. Like it was pretty awesome. Like they got it right. It was very well done on from the tech side. Yeah,
everything is really good. I I think it's a great show. I can't wait to finish it. I'm just watching it with my GF, so I gotta watch it. I can't like binge it. We gotta be together when we watch it, so I can't just like. That's the only reason that I haven't finished it yet.
Well,
I'm
I look forward to talking to you about it because
I'm being loyal. I'm being loyal. Otherwise, I would have binged the entire thing in one sitting.
and we would have already done a podcast.
But the point, I guess, I guess the ultimate point I was trying to make was that Russia would probably benefit because they would be a primary oil supplier or be a greater oil supplier than they already are. And when you think about it, ironically enough, like one of the reasons why the Soviet Union kind of fell, it's not the only reason, but one of the big hits on the Soviet Union was when Saudi Arabia started producing more oil and the price. The Soviet Union was an oil producing country and the price of oil lowered when Saudi Arabia started producing more oil. And that was a huge hit on the Soviet economy. So I think that's an interesting, that would be an interesting turn of events, but I don't think any of that's going to happen.
Nope. You know, it's funny. I actually got a text message from a good friend of mine that listens to the show. And I forgot that that he's an avid listener, and he texted me at like 2 a.m. one morning. He's like, dude, I'm freaking out right now. Like, please tell me and please explain that, you know, we're not going to go to World War III. And I'm like, I just laughed and I'm like, dude, no, not going to happen. It would take a direct and clear attack from Iran for this to go down. Otherwise, it's not going to go down.
They'd have to be suicidal to do something like that.
Right. And
we just explained how devastating for us it would be, but like they'd have it would still win.
Yeah.
So also in the world, which I found interesting, and I want to get into this into another. We should get into this into another show because this is something that I said that we were going to do a podcast on, but Mohammed Morsi died.
That's right. Yeah.
And he died while he was in court.
Yep. Of a heart attack.
Yeah. For those who don't know, Morsi was the transitional leader.
The first elected president in Egypt.
He was a transitional leader between Mubarak and Sisi.
Mm-hmm.
And he died of a heart attack in court. And he's been in jail he was in jail since 2013. And the Muslim Brotherhood is saying it was a murder.
Well, I'm sure we'll hear a lot more about it.
Erdogan is calling him a martyr.
Really?
Yeah. Huh. I really want to do a really in-depth podcast on this subject.
Yeah, I want to talk about that too. That sounds like an interesting topic.
The good old the MB. The MB is where it all begins. The good old MB.
Major Bonesaw.
The Muslim Brotherhood. Because they're kind of like the start of those fringe Islamist groups that went off to become these global terrorist groups. Like they're kind of they set the stage for people like Bin Laden and Zarqawi.
No, we'll have to talk.
They're the ones. I mean, they're the ones who the reason why Egypt didn't want them in power, or not in power, but the reason why they were a fringe movement in Egypt is because they tried to assassinate Nasser, and they assassinated Sadat. So, we'll get into it's a whole other can of worms that we'll open up on another episode.
A whole lot of extended research on that to make sure that we're not overgeneralizing or sweeping over any important details, but you know, it's something I'm interested in talking about too. So
yeah, we'll do. That's actually next on the agenda. I've already started writing it. I already started writing the foundation of the script, but we will be in tune with all of you guys. I don't know, Dan, you have anything else to say?
No. Yeah, if you're laying up at night and you think we're about to go to war, just chill out. Most likely not going to happen, so you're good.
Yeah, I don't think that we're going to go to war, but I think it's something to stay on top. Hold your governments accountable. That's all I have to say.
Yep.
For stupid shit they get you into. At the very least, I will say is that the more kind of type of escalation that the more tripwire that you put in there in that crowded region, the more likely it is. But
it's still a long shot.
I think it's still a long shot. Hopefully we're right.
Yep.
All right, everyone who's listening, if you like the show, please rate and review it. That is the best way to support the show. If you're on Apple, and just give it a rating, scroll down, give it a little 5-star, write a nice little review. It's much appreciated. And thank you guys for listening. It's always appreciated.
Peace.
Peace.